So now we're going to bring something that's a little bit different from what I often bring, and that is a little primer on candlesticks. Now, I want to, always thank Steve Nissen, who wrote many great books on candlesticks, Japanese candlesticks, and he created the adoption into all of these charts that everybody uses with candlesticks patterns. What's very different about candlesticks from bar charts is that they show psychology, the psychology of the market. And many of them are named in ways that are reflective of that. In fact, one of the very early videos I did about 5 years ago, and you can go back into our video library of over 500 videos, and you'll see I did one in there of my 22 favorite candlestick patterns. And what's different about that video is that I talk about the psychology of each pattern, so what it means. And that is, I think, really good information. We talked earlier in the show about the great rotation and about Arvi's great video that shows, two sides of the big rotation that's going on. The stocks that look like they've bottomed and the stocks that look like they've topped, over 20 of them. So that was intermediate, where he looked at the weekly charts. I'm going to do something a little different now, and these are examples of top patterns in the text, the stay-at-home stocks, work-at-home stocks that were getting bought pretty significantly for a long period of time. And now these candlesticks are giving these warnings. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to look at gap reverse, which is essentially an invisible gap, kicker pattern, abandoned baby, which is an island with just one bar, and an island reversal, where you can see why we think that these stocks are going to be very out of favor and that they're likely not going to be high odds of getting any real upside in there. So let's take a look as we switch over, and the first stock we're going to look at is CREE. CREE is a great example of a gap reverse. It's a gap reverse, or invisible gap is what it's called. Often it comes at or near highs. You can see this shooting star right over here that made the top, and then it came down, it tried to get back up again, and then when that news came out on Monday and the market opened so strongly, CREE got up here and gap to the upside, but then reversed. This is a gap reverse or invisible gap because the gap is inside of here because of the upside opening, and then it engulfed actually both of these previous bars. When you get that kind of action, what it essentially tells you is there are sellers up there. And where's the zone that the sellers are coming in very clearly? Well, that's like right in this zone right over here, where you can see between like 74 and 77, there are sellers there waiting. And the stock is getting up right now. The probabilities of getting anywhere significantly above 77 is very low compared to getting up, getting to the downside by some significant amount. And if you break that little upward trend line, as you can see, which is around 63 to 64, then you could get much, much lower prices. We also have what is a pretty big double top, as you can see right over there. And the measurement of the double top is from 75 down to about 56. Well, that's 19 points. That would take the stock well into the 40s. I'm not going to predict anything like that right now. However, that's just the warning that we're looking at, that CREE could see much lower prices, and that is an example of a gap reverse. That's an engulfing pattern. The next one is AVGO, which is Broadcom. And you can see in here, Broadcom has our cycle analysis in there. And you can see the magnificent rhythms that are in there. Now, what we're looking at, let's just look at these last three cycles. And you can see the what cycle analysis is it gives you a length, a common length from low to low. And as long as you're bullishly configured, in other words, the highs are higher and the lows are higher, you're in a bullish condition. Now you get this double top condition and another gap reverse that you see right in here, and that gap reverse is suggestive of the fact that a top is in place. It gapped down right over here. You now have a bear flag, and it got support right over here where it's supposed to, and moving up. However, when this bear flag breaks down, it's pretty likely that you're going to start to see some downside of significance. We expect the stock to fall well into the 340s or lower, and that again, a gap reverse, gapped up, came down, engulfed that last bar over there, and that is often an important high. These are very, very high confidence patterns when you look at that. Texas Instruments, another example of a gap reverse that you could see there on the top of that upward channel. Again, you could see the cyclical rhythms in here, and each of these pointing to important lows, and when you get that, you end up getting a beautiful rhythm. You see the bottom right there, and the bottom here, and then the bottom here, and the bottom here. You can see that in each of those peaks, higher, 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 and higher. And if you get underneath that key level right, well, that's not exactly it, but right around right over here, under 141, then that's going to be the sign that the stock is in a lot of trouble. This upward trend line right now is at about 145, 146, so that could be the breakdown in there. Momentum in here has been choppy. As you could see, our slim ribbon on there going from bullish to neutral to bullish to neutral. Never did get bearish, not once. So that is a look of Texas Instruments with that very, very significant gap reverse pattern that you can see, very likely making the top of this cycle, and the probabilities are very high that it's going to continue to the downside. Marvell, the next one, look at the cycle rhythms, look at the gap reverse. It wasn't a huge upside gap, but it is a bearish dark cloud cover. You could see the gap reverse back over here and how that set the top to this cycle. Now, because this was a negative cycle right over here, a lower low, and then failing testing the high, this says it's likely to get under $35 over here, and this is a risky stock in our opinion. Microsoft has been one, of course, the FANG stocks and one of the darlings. This is an example of not only a gap reverse, but an island that occurred in there, and you can see the cyclical rhythms in here. Our members get these charts. If you're level 4, you get them to put on your TOS platform, and if you're level 3, you get them in static form on our Slimulator ranking system. And this looks very much like a top. You could see the little bear flag that's forming in there, and the likelihood that this is going to break underneath that flag and then give you lower prices. Fell to support, but lower is what the highest odds are in Microsoft. So these are just fantastic patterns. Those are 5 examples of gap reverse, with this one also being an island. Let's look at a couple kicker patterns. Netflix, NFLX, beautiful kicker. Now kickers often come at the highs. This one was at the high of this little upside move, so it comes up to the resistance, gives you the downside gap. Momentum turns negative in here, as you can see in the slim ribbon. As it points down, there's your red arrow right there, and it fails in a big way. This looks like it's headed to 433, about 50 points down in the next couple of weeks. Here's your gap reverse to the downside with a dark cloud cover. Here's an evening star. Here is a gap reverse with a dark cloud cover, a top, a top, a top, and this top comes in resistance, which is just a sick pattern. And this looks much lower. Netflix, I think it is a sell. The next one is Roku, R-O-K-U. Man, I'm giving you a lot today. Here's your bear kicker that also looks like an island right up over here, or an abandoned baby. It's got this, it's attempting to rebound in there, but it's really not able to. So that is a kicker pattern. So what is a kicker pattern? It closes near the high right over here, and then the next day gaps down. Sometimes it gaps all the way below the bar. This is a hugely negative pattern when you look at that bear kicker, and very, very likely to see a decline here under 200, maybe down to 185, based on the pattern we see here. In Roku, those are your 2 kicker patterns, Netflix and Roku. Now we're going to go to a couple of abandoned babies. ADSK, Autodesk. Wow, is that thing ever screaming. I didn't put up the cycle analysis in here. I'm just showing you that one bar up there, a gap up, and then a gap down. And this is a very, very sick pattern. We're going to look for Autodesk to get under that 220 level. Pretty important looking top when I look at that. INTU, Intuit, there's your cyclical patterns in there screaming at you, the beautiful rhythms. The move to a new high, which is a shooting star, gap up, gap down, abandoned baby. Bandon Baby is a single bar up here versus 2 bars on an island. I'll show you an island right in a moment. And now setting the top. Momentum is still strong in here and likely to roll over when we look at that. Intuit, in our opinion, has topped. And the last one I'm going to show you is an island reversal, PYPL, where you have PayPal, which has been a great stock. It may still be a great stock. This one has what we call out-of-phase cycles. There's a minor cycle, the black, and the ghosted cycle is that gray. And so they're kind of off, but look at the beautiful double top in here. And after that double top, it gets up here. You have these two gap up and 2 of these bars, and then the gap down. Momentum turns negative in here, fails at resistance. The likelihood of a move under 170 is very high, and there you have it. You have 10 stocks that are giving you actually a primer here on candlesticks that have very likely topped. Extremely high odds. We think that these upside attempts that they're in are going to fail, and some of these are possibly major tops because you had buying in a lot of these stocks that pushed them up to sick values, and that is likely not going to be able to continue again. So that is our primer for today on candlesticks, and hopefully you love that information.